Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello, and welcome, everyone. It is Friday night, and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio, the only radio show without commercials and with more great paranormal talk. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Anthony Agati in New York.
And I'm Lucy Liebfried in Chicago. Are you ready for another Paranormal Friday night? Thank you all for joining us tonight. We welcome all of our regular listeners and those of you who have tuned in for the very first time. Now, if you have a question for our guests or about the topic tonight, feel free to ask us in the chat room or call into the show at 661-244-9831. Please press the number 1 to speak to the host. Now, don't forget, you can always send us an email with future topics that you'd like to see on the show, or maybe you have a story or a theory that you want to share with us on air. Our email address is paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com. We also have our own YouTube channel where you can listen in to all of our previous shows. Now, don't forget to check us out on our Facebook show page for more information on the paranormal and upcoming shows.
Well, before we get on to the show, I actually have an issue to address, a big, major issue, and Lucy doesn't know about this, actually. I wanted to actually surprise her on the air with this and say that this issue, I can't stand it anymore, and I'm really tired of it. No, I'm kidding. I can't say that anymore. I'm kidding. Happy birthday, Lucy.
Thank you.
Lucy is turning 21 again.
Yes, I am. I'm legal now.
How does it feel to be 21?
Cool.
That's it? Cool?
Yeah. No, it's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful day so far, and I know it's just going to get better.
Well, we were actually, if you've been listening to our shows the past couple of weeks, we've actually planned our paranormal investigation at Penhurst State Asylum next week. But originally we were actually supposed to do it today for Lucy's birthday, but there were some conflicts with the venues, so we had to move it a week further out. And so we were actually going to try and celebrate Lucy's birthday with the spirits of Penhurst. That would have been cool.
I know.
Did we actually do that for your birthday at Prospect Place?
Yeah, we went to Prospect Place. It was my birthday.
It was on your birthday when we were there, right?
Yes.
Why don't I remember ever doing any sort of celebration with the spirits? Did we?
No, we didn't.
That's weird. How come?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, even though it is next week, we're still going to celebrate. I think it'll be cool to celebrate and see what they say. I'm not sure what celebrations that they had at Penhurst State Asylum for themselves. And so maybe, we can do something where we play the happy birthday song to you and see if they react. I think it'll be curious to see if anything comes out of it.
I'm just anxious to get there. I really want to see what we can find, and it'll just be great. It'll be great.
One of the things that we did in preparation and research for next week's show at Penhurst State Asylum is is, gathering up all the information that we can. And one of the things that we actually want to do whenever we do go to a location is try and get names of people. That's the most important thing that you can try and do in your research whenever you do go to a haunted location to investigate, is getting names, because if you're able to repeat those names and say them correctly, the correct names of the people who lived there prior or who had experienced things there before in that particular location, it's good to connect with their names. And one of the things that I found was that there's I think it's findagrave.com. I think that's the website. And I've used this website before, and it was actually when we went to Pottstown Elementary School. And this website is really great if you're ever interested in it. And it was able to actually give me the names of the deceased who died at Penhurst State. And there is I believe there is a cemetery or a graveyard that's actually on the site there, on the grounds. And these are the deceased that had been in the state hospital there, and had died on the premises, so that they had created this cemetery and this graveyard for them. And it gives you the list of the names and their birth date and their deceased date and a little bit of a history of them, which is really, really cool. So, it would be interesting to see if anybody actually shares your birthday or is within and around the date that we're going to be there, that we can celebrate with them, and see if there's a reaction that we can gather, or if there's a connection that we can get. I think it'll be really cool.
I think it'll be nice because I don't think they had much to celebrate when they were there. So maybe by doing this, maybe we'll get a reaction. I'm hoping we do.
We've never done anything like that before. We've never actually celebrated anything. We've never, I guess, brought out some sort of, I don't know any other word, but celebrating or party atmosphere whenever we've gone to a haunted location. It's very different, and I guess we tend to not think of those things when we do that. But I really want to try this at this site next week. I really want to try some things that are different. And, I hadn't mentioned this to Lucy before, and I wanted to sort of get you guys, your feedback on this. And the folks that are in chat right now, we've got Robin and Sharon and Susan, and I see Mateo just got into chat, and TJ Vaughn there, and Connie, of course, and all our guests. But I'm curious to see if anybody thinks I'm on a wrong path in this direction. I had been listening to for many, many years on YouTube meditation music. Excuse me. And just recently, not that I hadn't known about this, but just recently I started to listen and to watch more of the Tibetan singing bowls. And I thought about this last night, about seeing with if there's, with the Tibetan singing bowls, you're supposed to actually meditate with this, and it brings you to a higher self. It brings you to a more peaceful, a healing part of you, a more heightened sense of awareness, a more heightened sense of being. And so I was curious, and I was thinking about this last night, what if we played music that was of the Tibetan singing bowls, and that's sort of that humming, continuous vibrational music that is used with a wooden, I think it's a mallet or some sort of wooden tool, rubbing against and clanging the sides of these copper bowls. And I thought, what would the reaction be with that, if there was any, to those spirits being heightened, or maybe creating a better connection with them with this Tibetan singing bowls. And I'm curious to see if anybody else, I don't know if anybody else has done that, or if you think I'm using it in the wrong sense. But I thought about it last night, and I said, what, maybe we should do it. Maybe we should try it. And I'm actually trying to see if I can actually get a Tibetan singing bowl. I don't know if I can get it in time by next Thursday, but if I cannot get it, I'm going to download some music and play it in the hospital in Penhurst when we go, and see if it does anything. Maybe I'm going to try it on air and see if there's anything. It may even, just hearing it, you as a listener, hearing that music may also bring you that much closer to the connection to where we're at. I don't know. It's a test. It's something that we can experiment with. I don't think it is of any harm, so I think it's pretty safe to do. But I just thought it was interesting, and I don't know if anybody else has a feeling on it. If you do and you don't want to comment here, by all means, you can always shoot us an email at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com and let us know that. But I thought it was pretty interesting to check that out. I don't know, Lucy, did you think I'm crazy or?
No. You know what? We've had such success with music, and I think maybe music will help them.
Well, yeah, I know definitely music, and I'm downloading a lot of historic music during different periods of the time that Pennhurst was open. So in the early 1900s all the way up until I think it was the 1980s. I'm not going to play any 1980s or 1970s songs, but I'm going to play some of the 1912, 1915s, and we actually used that music when we were at the Liskak's Murder House, which came out to be really effective. And so I really want to do the music this time. And we did it at Poasttown Elementary. Remember that, Lucy? That was really amazing.
Yeah.
We had the flashlights actually move into the music at the same time. So we're definitely going to do that. I definitely do want to do music here. I think maybe more children's music, because I think at one point, in one period of time, there were a lot of children in this hospital. And, we're also going to bring some toys and books, and we're going to interact in that way to see if we can try and get some communication. There is some negativity that has been apparently witnessed or experienced in this place, especially at the Mayflower building at Pennhurst in the basement. And so I'm not sure how we're going to interact with that spirit. My focus, I think, is more so with the children and with the patients there and trying to connect with them, trying to get some sort of feedback from them. And so, Lucy, as we're waiting for our guests to call in, one of the things that I had found online, again, doing research for Pennhurst Next Week, was, I don't know if it was a book. I don't know if it was actually published. And, Lucy, I don't know if you did any further reading into what it was, if it was a book or if it was just some notes that one of the patients at Pennhurst Hospital actually wrote about. And I didn't get all the way through it. I got halfway through it, and it was pretty amazing, graphic, very graphic, and it was written by a patient there who was really not taught how to read or write that well. And so it comes across in that manner in this writing, and he wrote it himself. But he talked about so many things, Lucy. I remember the stories that I had read, but was there anything that you in particular found sort of astonishing or even sort of took your breath away?
I will admit the whole thing made me cry. I read the whole thing. It's the abuse, the sense of abuse that this person experienced, and the feeling of being abandoned. That really got to me. So this is definitely going to be a different experience. I mean, this is a completely different place than where we've been. So I'm really curious, and I've got the butterflies already. I've had them for a couple of weeks. And every time I get the butterflies ahead of time, I know that something's going to happen. Yeah,
and as you can see, we don't just, pick up the natural history of a location. I like to go, me personally, I like to go a little bit further, and I sort of go off on different areas. And when I came across this blog, or I guess it's a book, I want to say it's a book because it tells the story and the life of this patient, and he's telling it in his own words. And he talks about the mistreatment that he received, pretty graphic, both physical and sexual abuse that he received. That he in particular was utilized in many different quote-unquote jobs that were at the Pennhurst State Hospital, that because it was so understaffed that he himself had to pitch in and change diapers on the babies. He had to clean the bathrooms. He had to help out in the cafeteria. He was in certain wards during his periods of time, and he never got paid for anything at all. And so he talks about all of that, and all through it, what was really compelling was his struggle to connect and to be a better person. He really wanted to be a better person, a good person, but something in his mind was holding him back. And one of the other things that he wanted to do was actually connect with a female. He wanted to have that companionship, and he did meet a woman. He did meet a girl, and he talks about that. And I won't go into the story in full detail because it's really cool. And we're going to read some excerpts from the book. And so I don't believe he has passed away. I don't know. He may have, and he probably did not pass away, obviously, in Pennhurst. But I think reading that story out loud, I think, may lend itself to be a little bit more comfortable to the spirits that are there, that they can relate to it. And if they hear our voices talking about it, they may feel as though we understand or we know. Most of the time when spirits want to communicate, they want us to know things, whether it's just knowing them and knowing the struggle or just knowing about the history of the place and what really went on. And so if we're reading this story from this previous patient of the hospital, maybe it'll lend themselves to be a little bit more comfortable with us. And so we're going to do that again. We're going to do that on air as well. In addition to that, we're actually going to try and do the video. We're desperately going to try and do this video again because I really want to make this happen, and I really want this to be shown to you guys, not just heard, but shown as well. So it's going to be really, really, really exciting. I don't know, Lucy. I don't know what else more to say about it and how much more to hype it, but I'm really excited for next week.
So am I. I'm really, really anxious to get there. I think this goes back to, again, what we've talked about on several shows, and it's intent. Our intent in going there is not to be antagonistic. It's not to be scared or anything like that. It's to communicate. And I'm hoping that our sense of that need to communicate will come through, and hopefully they'll respond to it. So I'm very excited about this. I really am. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Well, I see our guests are in the queue. I see both of them there. So let me get on to the intro, Lucy, okay?
Okay.
All right. It's been described by witnesses as having brown skin, glowing reflective red eyes inset into its chest, massive dark wings like a huge bird that folded up into its back, standing 6 or 7 feet tall, extremely fast while in flight. What are these witnesses describing? None other than the infamous Mothman, notably sighted in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, during the years 1966 and 1967, but has been witnessed before and after this date, including up until recent years. What is this creature, and why does it appear before and during massive local catastrophes, usually involving a big incident or several deaths? Is the Mothman responsible for these occurrences, or is it suddenly appearing to warn us humans of terrible acts that may cause massive devastation? Some have even said that there may be even a connection to UFOs and this alleged Mothman. But skeptics say it's nothing but a normal sandhill crane that has a red spot on its head, which can be misunderstood for the red glowing eyes. Whether you believe the phenomenon or not, it's one hell of a story. Tonight we have 2 great guests on the show who are familiar with this phenomenon, and to Lucy and I. Mateo and Mike are co-hosts to the online radio show The Whatcast that delve into all things paranormal and discuss the topics like never before. You might say that Mateo and Mike are obsessed with the Mothman phenomenon. So what better way to discuss the topic than with these 2 intelligent personalities? Please help me in officially welcoming to the show, and I hope they're online, Mateo and Mike. Hey, guys, thanks for coming on the show.
How are you guys? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We got you.
Holy crap, I can't believe it. I've been trying to figure this out for 15, 20 minutes.
Well, we got you, and we're not letting you go, so stick there. Stay there.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Okay, well, first thing I have to say that the Whatcast is an amazing show, and not because we were guests on the show, but because it's just a comfortable show to listen to. I mean, there's such a good relationship that you two have. It's almost like one voice. So, how did you both get into the paranormal and into radio?
Go ahead, Mike.
First? Oh, you want me? All right. Well, I've been into paranormal since I was a kid. I always was really into horror movies, and I always I was the kid who I would tell my mom there were monsters in my closet, and she would say no, and I would be mad because I would want there to be monsters in my closet. So I mean that's just kind of the type of person I am. So I was kind of drawn to the paranormal and everything, and I started out with UFOs and got into ghosts and things like that, and then Bigfoot and various other cryptids, and this is all as a kid. I was just really into that stuff, and it's continued through to my adult years. And me doing the show with Mateo is really actually a weird thing, because I'm not a social person at all, and Mateo was a complete stranger when we did our first show. Like, we hadn't even talked at that point. I called him on Skype and we started the show.
That must have been a strange encounter, no?
Yeah,
It was. I just thought of the idea. I had been a guest on a podcast with a friend of mine, and he said, "Well, what's the name of your podcast?" I said, "I don't have a podcast." He's like, "Well, why don't you?" And I was like, "Why don't I? I don't do crap all day. I should. Why not?" So I remember saying on Twitter, "I'm going to attempt to record the first episode tonight." And I sat there and I recorded for about maybe 2.5 hours, and I got about 18 usable minutes. So I went to Twitter the next day. I was like, "Well, that's over." And me and Mike had been friends on Twitter.
Mateo, are you there?
I think
that was that.
Oh, we lost you, Mateo.
Really?
Mateo?
God darn it!
Yeah.
All right, we got you now. I hear you now.
It was the heartwarming part of the story that we missed.
I know.
That was when the puppies came in, right?
Yeah, and the rainbows and hearts and all that shit.
Mateo, did we lose you officially? I think we did. All right, I think he just dropped off. He's going to try and call in.
Well, anyway, we used to just share UFO videos on Twitter, and he mentioned he was doing a show, and I told him that I would help him out, and I came on the first show to help him out just as like his first guest, and I mentioned the Skinwalker Ranch as being my favorite paranormal story just because it involved everything. So he wanted to have me back on the show to do a second episode with him, and then from there I kind of just stuck around.
Had you ever thought of doing any, or would you ever believe 2-3 years ago that you'd actually be doing this on air?
No, never. Like even the first day that we did it, I was kind of hoping that the call wouldn't work or something would go wrong, so I didn't. I'm just really not a social person at all, and I hate public speaking. So it's really weird that I have a show that I do that. But to me now, I look at it more as being just a conversation that I'm having with another person that happens to be recorded and people happen to listen to.
Right, and it actually, your show I've listened to, it's amazing, and you guys have that great rapport, that great conversation, that it comes off that way. It's sort of like, and I said this to Lucy before, it's almost like we're eavesdropping on a phone call, because that's how comfortable you two guys are when you're talking about it. But it's so interesting at the same time that you don't want, it's like you don't want to hang up that phone to listen to that and eavesdrop on that private conversation. Mateo, are you there?
Sir.
You there? I think
yes.
You're there. Talk again.
Hello.
Hello.
There we go.
Huzzah.
Somebody has a curse on me, guys.
All right, so
because you talked about the shadow people again on the last show.
Did I?
That's why.
Is that the Obama people?
Well, don't get us started.
I know.
Well,
It's funny.
let's get started on the subject tonight, okay? So, Mateo, what about this Mothman, okay? How did you become interested in the Mothman? What is it about this creature that compelled you to research further?
Well, much like Mike, it started when I was a kid. I just loved monsters and horror movies and monster movies and stuff like that, and just being a sixth grader, going to the library and looking for books, even as an adult, going to a public library and ask for a book on cryptozoology, and they would just look at me and shake their head. They didn't even know what it was. But I was fortunate enough to find a couple, and one of them mentioned the Mothman, and then I studied that for a few years, and then the movie came out with that Richard Gere film.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of re-sparked my interest in Mothman, but my whole life I've been studying cryptids and all things paranormal, but the Mothman just stood out to me because, we like Lucy said, there's a whole sand hill crane thing, which I'm sure Mike will get into. Those things at their base are about 3 feet tall, not 9.
Right.
Not 9 feet tall. So to me, Mothman was just one of the cryptids that, one, it just couldn't be described as anything else that existed. And two, it was kind of unique in its description. So for me, as a little kid, it was genuinely a monster. It was really something that could this been a bird? No, not when you read actual accounts and listen to people who claim to have seen it talk about it. And it's just this weird mystery thing. It's because you see a lot of depictions of Mothman, and almost none of them actually match what people described. I remember having a bunch of pictures of Mothman, and I loved them, and then Mike reminding me, he doesn't have a head. Nobody ever reported him having a head. His eyes were in his chest. And I was like, oh, what? And he didn't have wings and arms. They said his arms were the wings. So he's just fascinating. There's nothing that could be what people were reporting.
Well, Mike, let me ask you the same question. How much research have you done, and what is it about this strange cryptid that allured you into its wings?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't even familiar with it until the movie came out, and it said it was based on true events, and I didn't even see previews for the movie. I had a break between classes at school, and there was a movie theater nearby, so I went. And that happened to be the one that was playing, and I saw the movie poster and it said based on a true story, so I went and watched it. And then, so I'm like, all right. After I saw it, I went and did some research, and I've done a lot of I've read pretty much every news article that came out during the time, and the stuff that came afterwards with the stuff with the first appearance of Indrid Cold was actually reported in the newspaper, so I read that article, and then I read all of the subsequent research on it, the interviews with the people, the documentaries. Like, I really got into it after watching that movie.
And we're actually gonna get into Indrid Cold and talk a little bit more specifically, but I wanted to sort of back up a little so that we catch people up. And some people may not be familiar with the story. I mean, again, they may have seen the movie or heard about it in conversation, but in case people are not familiar with the Mothman sightings, can either of you sort of give a brief overview of the Mothman and why it's become so famous?
Sure. It started in '66, and the first person who saw it was this guy named Merle Patridge. He's the first one who reported that he was having trouble with his TV, and he heard this loud noise outside. It sounded like a generator trying to start up. So he went outside, and he saw... His story has kind of changed. Originally, he said that he saw two big glowing red eyes that looked like reflectors. And he said his dog took off after it, and then he never saw his dog again. But later on, he said that it looked like a group of red orbs that were kind of whirling in a spinning circle. And but it's interesting that he says that, because a lot of the people that report seeing it said that it took off like a helicopter, like it kind of spun and then it was in the air flying after them in the car. But with Merle, there was kind of an interesting thing that went on with him, because he actually had subsequent sightings or weird occurrences. And the following night, he had a knock on his door. He opened the door, and a guy said his car went off the road because some large flying thing flew in front of his car, and he couldn't find his 6-year-old now. So they went searching for I think it was his daughter, and they looked for an hour and a half. They called the police, and the police came and looked for another couple hours, and then all of a sudden she appeared on the road just walking, and she looked all dazed, didn't remember what happened at all. And that happened right out in front of his house the following day, which was the same day that it was first reported near the TNT factory. And that there were two couples at the TNT factory. They were going. The TNT factory, I should explain, was a party spot that kids would go to. It was an old military factory where they would produce I think it was the black powder for TNT, and they housed it in these igloos that they had covered over with earth. So if there are any spy planes, the grass would grow over it, and so overhead it would just look like rolling hills. But this was no longer used, and they were hanging out at the TNT plant. And as they were driving down the road, they see this figure. It's just what they described as a man-shaped gray figure with glowing red eyes, and it was standing on the side of the road. And as they drove past, it took off into the sky and flew after them. And they were driving over 100 miles an hour, they said, and this thing was keeping up with them somehow. And they reported it to the sheriff.
And this was how far before the infamous Silverbridge sighting and incident?
I believe this was a few months before it. I think the Silverbridge.
So almost around the same time then.
Yeah, the Silverbridge happened around Christmas. I think this was early November.
Yeah, the Silverbridge fell actually to the day a year later after the TNT sighting reporting. So yeah, it's almost to the day, which is very creepy. Like another thing that's what I love about Mothman, as Mike was saying, this car is traveling over 100 miles an hour, and this thing's keeping up with it. But if you listen to the testimony there's two couples that were in the car. The TNT area was like an old makeout place for couples, so that's what they were doing there.
Right.
I don't know why you want to take a friend to do that, but they said that it kept up with their car, and as it flapped its wings, it hit the side of their car, and they could tell that during this chase, at 100 plus miles an hour, it flapped its wings maybe 3 or 4 times. So this thing was able to do that type of speed with little effort, which again lends to what the hell is that?
Well, there's a couple things that happened to this first guy who saw it. Didn't his dog disappear, and didn't his TV explode at the time?
Yeah, I haven't heard about the TV, but his dog did disappear, and someone actually reported seeing a dead German Shepherd, which is what his dog was.
It was the Scarberries.
The road. Yeah, the Scarberries. That they were one of the pair in the car, and they reported seeing the German Shepherd on the side of the road as they were driving, as this thing was flying over them, and they were going back into town. So it was the following night.
Well, one of the things that popped into my head as you were telling the story about what the eyewitnesses had captured or experienced, I always sort of, and Lucy hates when I do this, but I always sort of weigh both areas. I always think about the other side of things. I mean, had anybody sort of verified and vetted and validated these witnesses in their story? I mean, if you're talking about going to a sort of make-out area, I'm sure there's alcohol involved. So
with any luck.
With any luck. So how true could these stories be? And had anybody sort of questioned the validity of any of these witnesses? If you know,
they ended up going to the police station, and the officer that they spoke with said that they were in such an agitated state. It seemed like they were telling the truth. He said if they weren't telling the truth, then they're really good actors.
Yeah,
but I mean, go ahead.
Sorry, Mike.
No problem.
I was just going to say, there's actually another report where there was a couple of dudes digging a grave near the same area that reported seeing a giant bird, and they reported that, and that got laughed off because it could have been just a big bird, and that's what Mothman was originally called, was Birdman.
That was the day before that was the same night as the Merle Patridge incident, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes it was, but they reported that, and they're like, okay, you saw a big bird, so that kind of provides a little cushion for another guy to say his TV blew up, his dog disappeared, and he saw this thing, and then two couples coming in saying they saw the same thing visually shaken, So I think by that time the cops were taking it serious.
Well, whenever I do any show on the paranormal, or even when Lucy and I do investigations, just like what we were just talking about before about our investigation next week, I always start off by asking the question, where did it all begin? Where's the birth of it all? Where did it start? And so obviously with this topic, I went there and I found stories of the Mothman in obviously Native American culture, Lucy, and I think you can't help but think about, and I mean this may be a far stretch, but think about the dinosaur age, and flying reptiles. Could there be any connection with that as well? I mean, with all of these stories that and the research and readings and findings that you guys have done, what do you think the Mothman is, and what kind of perception do you think, where did it come from?
I have a very interesting theory about that.
Okay.
It kind of bleeds into the Indrid Cold thing, which a lot of people, like the Mothman movie, had Indrid Cold in it, and a lot of people associate Indrid Cold with Mothman, and it kind of has nothing to do with the other. But when we get an Indrid Cold, you'll understand better. But I think it's a creature brought from another planet that must have escaped some type of a craft that was around in the area. Indrid Cold was somebody who visited somebody on this planet who said he was an alien, and he said he had creatures from different planets on his ship. So that's what I think it was, because again, it doesn't match anything we've ever seen before. The only thing I can think of is the anthropophagi, which you guys might remember. They're called blimies. Shakespeare wrote about them. They have the face and the chest and stuff. That's the only thing I can link Mothman to as far as description goes. So I think it's something that's as far out there as some type of interdimensional / interplanetary animal.
I've also heard, and I don't know how true this is, but some groups or some people are actually comparing it to another sighting, and they're calling the other thing cryptid the grinning man, and they're sort of putting the two together, or somehow there could be a relation between the two, and I'm not too sure about that. But Mike, where do you think the Mothman began, or how do you think it sort of came here?
Well, I mean, do you mean in Point Pleasant itself, or in general?
I think in general, wherever history is sort of allowing the truth of the Mothman to be revealed at whatever point in time in history, where do you sort of feel that was was it created here? Is it, as Mateo was talking about, brought here from another planet, or do you think it is of sort of paranormal, spiritual realm, dimensional being or something?
I think it's all a matter of interpretation, really. And I think it's got a lot to do with the way that you're looking at what is being reported through history, through art mostly at this point. But I've seen it attributed to ancient Egypt because they've got their gods have, they've got gods with wings and gods with bird heads and things like that. So some people, as a matter of interpretation, take that as them having some sort of Mothman-like figure. And then there's cave paintings on walls of figures with big wings and big eyes. And can you attribute that to it? It's really all how you're going to look at things. But in my opinion, whenever it goes to the paranormal, I always think dimensional type things. I don't. To me, aliens and UFOs, they're not things from another planet. I feel like it's some sort of other dimensional being, and I think along with this one, and the reason I think that is just because there's always so much other things that go on whenever you see some sort of sighting like this, where there's a lot of just strange things happening, because you've got the Mothman, you've got the UFO sightings, you've got the entered cold stuff, the MIB stuff, and so it seems like it always comes together in areas where there's a lot of activity. So I always have to go with some sort of dimensional rift or some sort of some way that they're accessing our dimension.
I'd love to have you guys back on to talk about UFOs, because I think, and I think we have to do like a 4-hour show, because I think you guys are amazing in that area as well. But one of the things that I recently read, where these people were sort of not trying to debunk, and that's not the right word to use, but sort of, I guess, try to explain the Mothman in a historical context, and they sort of compared it to the Mayans and the Mayan culture, and sort of like what you were saying just before, Mike, about the Egyptians. The Mayans revered nature and animals, and by revering them, they sort of took on that persona as those animals. So, of course, they would have headdresses that were of a bird-like feature, and with the beak and everything, possibly the wings. And there are sculptures and pieces from those time periods that depict that. And, it's sort of like how Catholics wear crosses around their neck on necklaces. It's sort of that respect, that attribution that you give to something that you are faithful to or that you believe in wholeheartedly. Could the idea that being passed down either orally or recorded on tablets or written history of this type of culture activity, where they would revere nature and animals that way, be passed down ancestrally, and those stories are sort of regurgitated and reverbed into aspects and stories that people sort of in the 19th and 20th century are sort of formulating it into a reality form. And when that thought process happens, you tend to sort of visually create that creature or that cryptid. Do you think there's any truth to that or validity to any of that could be one of the possible explanations for the Mothman?
Yeah, I definitely think that. And I don't know, there's just so much weird stuff that goes on that it's really hard to pinpoint it, I think. So I think, like, really it could be an alien. It could be some dimensional creature. It could be a mutated sandhill crane.
Right.
Or if you're Joe Nickel, it could be a burnout.
Well, Mateo, what do you think? Do you think that this could be sort of like a thought influenced, by history, a thought-influenced vision that people are just attributing to it? And so it's sort of like, okay, there's an object or an image that's sort of far away, and it could be the witnesses that saw something on the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant, and maybe they knew about this, or maybe they heard about this history in Mayan culture or Egyptian culture, and their brain is sort of doing it automatically, and they're attributing it to, that looks like a headdress, or it looks like a big beak and a bird's head or something like that, and it looks like it's flying away, and then they create that thought to be true. Do you think that there is any reality in that? Because I know that happens with people who have ghost sightings, and they say, it's just your mind playing tricks on you. You think it's formed that way. And so I'm sort of relating it to this factor and creating it and hear it as an explanation. I'm not sure whether or not it fits anywhere.
Yeah, I definitely believe that if you go looking for something and you want to see something bad enough, you'll see it. Right. I remember being a kid and watching an episode of In Search Of, and it was about Bigfoot. So they took like 20 random people and walked them down this trail and made a shape out of like branches and stuff. I think about like 8 people mentioned seeing some type of humanoid creature on their walk, and it was just awesome to see them be like, yeah, I saw it. He was moving, he was breathing, I heard it. And at the end, they're just like, yeah, that was sticks we put there. So if you want to see something bad enough, you're going to see it. Historically, Mothman appears throughout history, like Mike said, through art and like even cave paintings and stuff like that. I know there's a lot of ties with the Native American culture, recognizing Mothman being some type of like a messenger, he's somebody who warns of danger and stuff like that. So even with all these like markers with art and some type of history throughout time, Mothman's never really been in the limelight. It's not something anybody's really delved into until that movie came out, and then that re-sparked people's interest. Before that movie, how many of us actually heard about the Mothman? Unless you're a nerd watching In Search Of and all. Yeah. Well, yeah, unless you're looking for that type of stuff. That's just something that didn't really hit the radar when it comes to that stuff. But I think you'll see what you want to see. But, I mean, I remember when I studied Mothman, the people of West Virginia, they're some tough people. And when after the first few sightings, because there was plenty of sightings after that, not of a sandhill crane, but of Mothman. And when they were presented with the idea, I think there were some college students and a couple of professors that said that it was a sandhill crane, and they were just downright insulted.
Yeah.
We know what a damn sandhill crane is, and that's not what we saw. This thing ran. This thing had legs like a dude. I think that you'll see what you want, but there is a lot of validity to a lot of the claims of the Mothman. That's one of the reasons why I love him. There's so many, and it's in modern times, It's not in the 1920s. This is 66 and 67. These people know what a sandhill crane is. These people know what a bat is. They know what a giant bat is. And nobody said it was a damn bird. Nobody said it was a giant bat. They said it was this giant creature. So I think, you gotta have your reserves about it and stuff like that, and take a report or any type of report you read as just that. But it's still very interesting that nobody said, damn, I saw the biggest bird the other day and it chased my ass in my car. Nobody said that.
And there were hundreds of people that saw it too.
Hundreds of people. Cops saw it, police officers, firefighters saw it.
Even if you take into account mass hysteria, or people that are just mistaking things due to everyone, or all the reports, there's still gonna be a large chunk of that are actually seeing something, which is very significant. There's not gonna be hundreds of people that mistake seeing something.
Right, just like the sighting of Mary at Lourdes. It's almost the same factor that way. You can't deny that the massive amount of people who have seen this and witnessed it. You can't tell me that out of all, say if it's 100 people, one of them has to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can do the same thing with a more recent account with the Phoenix Lights. I mean, there was a football stadium of lights floating above a city for hours.
And literally thousands of people saw that one.
Thousands of people. And they still brushed it off. But still, I mean, if you haven't heard about the Phoenix Lights, I don't know what else type of proof people want to understand.
I know.
To believe that there's aliens. But, I mean, that just goes to show you. I mean, I had a buddy who had never heard about it. I showed him the footage, and he just stood there with his mouth open. And I was like, yeah, that happened for real. Can you believe that? We still question it?
Well, you touched on this just a little bit, and many people think that the sighting of a Mothman is supposed to warn us humans of some kind of devastation or some horrible accident that's going to occur in the future. So do you think that this is wishful thinking out of fear, or do you think that this creature is actually causing the devastation?
Well, I mean, there's been other Mothman sightings. Like 10 years after the Point Pleasant sightings, people started seeing it in Texas. And again, they didn't say it was a giant bird and stuff like that. And this could be more credited towards what you were talking about, Anthony, about people, sensationalism and making stuff up. But it's been cited around a lot of tragedies. The tsunami in India, Afghanistan and Iraq. I remember a couple of shitty photos of Mothman being photoshopped into the Twin Towers on September 11th.
Oh, God.
But, I mean, even in Point Pleasant, there's recent reports of Mothman being around there.
I mean, and
Okay.
do you think that this Mothman is causing these incidences, or do you think that the sightings are there because he is, as in Native American culture, he's there to, or she, I don't know the sex of this, to warn us of something, sort of preempt us, to warn us that something may be happening or may happen?
I don't really know if either is the case, to be honest. Like I've heard a lot of people argue it both ways, and some say that it caused the Silver Bridge and that's why it's there, and because after the Silver Bridge collapsed, nobody saw it again. Well, I guess there were a few stragglers that said they saw it, or still say they see it occasionally in the TNT place, but the mass sightings and all the UFO sightings were gone from that point. And so they attribute that to the Mothman causing it. But then there's others that say that the Mothman was there trying to warn them. But I've got two problems with that. One, just flying around freaking people out by chasing their car. Like, what the hell kind of warning is that? It's not like you're like standing on the bridge waving your arms, be like, hey, don't go on this bridge. Or, that's a warning. Just flying and chasing people in a car isn't a warning.
But what if he's an alien animal? He's just like got the mentality of a dog, and he's just like, I'm going to stand here and scare you so you don't come here.
Well, then he should be standing and scaring people off the bridge rather than chasing them down back roads near TNT plant.
or taking their dogs away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that maybe he got hungry. Aliens have to eat too.
Right.
But the other reason, like, why? I mean, yeah, the Silver Bridge collapsing. That is pretty tragic. Like 40-something people died, but we've had way bigger tragedies. Where was he then? Why wasn't he chasing cars down the street of New York before 9/11? Right. Like it's so that whole thing as him as a warning doesn't make sense either. I mean it's a crazy coincidence, and I don't want to say that it's just a coincidence because of all the other crazy stuff that's happened, but I don't know. I don't think that the Mothman really had anything to do with it.
Well, it's interesting because Linda Scarsberry, one of the couples that were in the car in their first initial sighting, she had claimed that her and her husband had seen Mothman hundreds of times after their initial encounter with him. And she said that it was, like he'd land on our lawn, or in some woods nearby, and they would see him. And she said she got the sensation, which I love that, Miss Scarberry was, cool enough to mention that with her, sensing with her feelings that it was a very sad creature. It was a very sympathetic creature. All the time she saw it with her husband after that, it was never a threat. She said she's come quite close to it, within 10, 15, 20 feet of it. And she says it seems like a quote, pathetic and sad type of creature. So that kind of lends to the warning thing. Dream Crusher Mike. He's a good guy, you jerk.
I'm sorry. Okay. I just don't. I think he'd be around more if he was here to warn us of tragedies.
Well, he's not a damn superhero.
Well, I'm not saying he needs to be a superhero, but why then and why never again since then? Why, like, you don't. Even though there've been reports of seeing him, it's never near tragedies. It's just like, oh, I saw the Mothman. He was hanging out the other day, hanging out on a bridge.
And that's why I think Lucy was just, when Lucy was just talking about that question and asked that, I think it may be that people are thinking, or it's that wishful thinking out of fear, because people don't want to assume that this creature is there to do any harm, and they're putting the connection of the Silver Bridge together with it, and maybe he was there to warn us about it. Okay, maybe he's good. Maybe it's it's not bad. It's not it's not after me or my dog. It's going to warn us. And I think that may be that mentality. And I think that may have been where the start of this whole thing came in. But I hate to say it, Mateo, but I kind of agree with Mike. I think I don't put any credence to it, because I think it was. This whole idea was created out of that fear that people had of this thing or this creature.
That very well could be true. I mean, as soon as the UFO sighting started during the same time, even the people that lived in Point Pleasant said that Mothman took a back seat. I mean, nobody cared about the Mothman anymore. They were getting UFO reports of them flying so low to houses and barns that it would take their. So there was a lot of stuff going on there.
I think we proposed the idea when we did a show on it, that because we talked about Indrid Cold as well, and we proposed the idea that maybe Mothman escaped from an intergalactic zoo, and Indrid Cold and all his people are out there looking around Point Pleasant for him.
Have you seen my Mothman?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was just reading an article on thoughtcatalog.com about the 46 most terrifying creatures around the world, like the Black Shuck in Britain, the Dover Demon in Massachusetts, the Agagwe in Africa, and even the Aswang in Asia. And many of these creatures are amazing in description, but they're also frightening in motive. Now, you guys kind of seem to have a sympathetic view towards Mothman, but has there been any reports of him actually attacking anyone? I mean, could his motives be harmful to us, or?
I haven't come across any accounts of him hurting anybody. I mean, for me, I'll totally agree. I'm quite sympathetic to the Mothman. I would love for him to be real above all cryptids. But, I mean, just like, for me, when I hear about him bringing those two couples out of the TNT area, I mean, there's a lot of crap that goes on in that TNT area. I mean, they've made documentaries just on that TNT plant alone, just because it's so toxic there. I've seen interviews with the fishermen that go out there and hunters, and they're just like, I would never eat anything from here. I've caught fish with two heads and stuff like that. So for me, I just think he was trying to keep them safe, like a superhero. I said he wasn't.
Out of all the stories that you've heard, the eyewitness accounts, and all the reports and cases that have been filed on this, or just sort of publicly been known, are there any of the stories that you have read? Have any of them sort of, in your initial research or your initial sort of look into the Mothman when you were first getting into it, or is any of them, or one particular person maybe, that struck out that really made you go, there is something to this. I believe that there could be some validity in the Mothman.
I think it was just the volume of it, the volume of reports that came from it, and everybody seemed to the descriptions varied a little bit, but everyone was reporting the big red eyes, and they always reported that it had wings. And I think that it's very, very possible that some of the reports were the sandhill crane, and some of the reports may have been barn owls. But there's just too many reports of people seeing the big man-sized flying things with red eyes, and people had close encounters with it too. Like one woman was so terrified that she dropped her child, who I think was like 10 months old or something, but it rose up from the ground. It had been laying next to her car, and as she was getting into her car, it rose up and she saw its eyes, and it was coming around the car. She ran inside the house and it started looking through the windows, but it never made a move to attack. It never tried to get in the house. It was just looking through the windows, and then it went away. But I mean, that's just one instance of a close encounter.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just the sheer volume of people that saw it, and all the reports and all the UFO sightings and all the other crazy shit that was going on at that point in time. It just all comes together, and it really makes me feel like something happened there, and it's not just people seeing birds.
Yeah, that particular... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, is it the same for you? Is it the volume, or is there a particular story that sort of stood out for you the most?
It's pretty much the same. It's the volume of reports, and I don't. We've talked about it on our show about. I mean, people will say that this police officer reported stuff like I had mentioned before. There was cops and firefighters that reported that stuff, but there's rotten cops, rotten firefighters. I mean, you can prove you can run for a mile, and you can become a firefighter. So that's not too much of a credit for it. But trust me, I love police officers and I love firefighters. I salute them every time I see them. But I mean, they're just people, and I do believe that those type of people have a specific mentality to where they're a bit more serious. A lot of the time, I have family members who are sheriffs in L.A. and they tell me freaking horror stories and stuff like that. But just with the same account that Mike talked about with that lady with her baby, I mean, she dropped it. That thing, 4 to 6 feet of Mothman. So you think about what is she, 5, 6, or 8 at the most, and she has this 9-foot tall creature in front of her, and she dropped her kid, and she ran and went back to her kid and laid on top of it. And she had mentioned, I've seen her interviewed, she had mentioned that she laid on top of that baby to where she was worried that she was going to kill it. She said, I knew my baby was struggling for air, but she just could not get herself to get off of it so that she can protect it from this, I mean, obviously insanely freaky unknown creature. And having her collect and grab her baby and go back in the house and then have it lurch around on her porch for a while, that's not a bird. I'm sorry, Joe Nickel. You're a dick. It's not a bird. It's not a bird.
Tell us how you really feel, Mateo.
I will. I've gone off on that guy a few times. Watch Monster Quest. Mike, what did you say? Nessie's an aquatic barn owl?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. UFOs are just bioluminescent barn owls.
Yeah, they all are. That's the answer to every single thing is barn owl. I'm not saying there's a barn owl, but it's a barn owl.
I hope I get some really cool paranormal footage to where, like, I just film my TV fall off its table and explode. I'd be like, Mike, barn owls. Did you see barn owl?
It's
my TV.
They would have swooped out of the sky. And Bigfoot is really just a barn owl carrying a deer carcass. I mean, come on.
Those rascally bastards.
We talked about 1966 and 1967, which is the infamous story of the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant. And I had sort of mentioned it in the intro tonight. but I wasn't 100% sure. Are there recent sightings or stories or experiences or an account of the Mothman?
Yeah, after about 10 years, I mean that's from what I understand, it's the closest as far as time goes. But 10 years after Point Pleasant, even like in 1996, people in Texas were reporting him flying down so much to where he was hitting their houses with his wings. And it's interesting that Lucy had mentioned him being aggressive. All the reports that come out from that time, there's only a few of them, a handful of them, but they do report him as being aggressive and not knocking on a door, but hitting a door, and not flying by a car, but bashing a car and trying to get in. So who knows? Maybe he's been lost in the woods since the 60s and he's freaked out.
Took some bad acid.
Yeah, he's still stoned out.
Well, okay, guys, you briefly mentioned Indrid Cold. Who is Indrid Cold, and who is Woodrow Durenberger?
This is my favorite part about the whole thing, because as I said before, he's really not related to the Mothman thing at all. And I love and appreciate how they linked it into the film. But Woody Durenberger was a traveling salesman, and this took place, I think, was like a whole 15 days before the Scarberry TNT report. But he was just a traveling salesman going back home. He lived in Parksburg, West Virginia, which is probably about 50 miles north of Point Pleasant. But he was driving down a highway, going home kind of at night, and he had noticed a car coming up on his rear pretty fast. And he said it was going so fast that he decided to get over to the right to let it pass. And as he went over to the right, it followed him to the right. And as it approached, it cut him off. And when it got in front of him, he noticed it was a giant spacecraft. It landed. A guy in a green jumpsuit came out and approached him and talked to him without opening his mouth. That's one thing that I love about this report, is that he said he never opened his mouth to talk. He spoke to him solely through telepathy. But he told him, hey, do you have a few minutes to talk? And he's like, I guess. And he said that he was an intergalactic traveler, and his people were kind of scientists, and they go around to collect geological data, and they were here, that our government knew about them, and that the only way that our country would give them some type of asylum or any type of support is if they surrendered their vehicle to them, and they didn't want to do that. And so he just went on. I guess Woody Durenberger was so shocked he decided to listen to him, and he said that he came from a different planet, and that's what they did, and that our government is very much aware of some type of intergalactic monopoly that's going on with alien races. And he even went so far as to tell him, when you leave here, please alert your authorities, and in a few days I'll verify your claims, because I know you'll look like a fool. But Indrid Cold, he said he was very handsome. He said he smiled a lot, which Anthony, you mentioned the grinning man, and from my studies, they're two different entities. The grinning man's more linked to the black-eyed kids than Indrid Cold.
But wasn't the grinning man seen like only a week before the whole Mothman thing went on?
I think the grinning man was first reported with the first batch of MIBs that hit West Virginia. That's when they started reporting a man smiling bigger than what the human mouth allowed.
The original grinning man was seen in New Jersey, and it was like a week before the Mothman sighting, and that's where the association comes in.
That's what I had heard, something about the Jersey connection with the grinning man.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I wonder.
Yeah, and there were kids that saw this guy and he was wearing what he was wearing was similar to what Woody Durenberger described Indrid Cold wearing.
I wonder. It very well could be. But just to get back to Indrid Cold, but Indrid Cold actually told Woody Durenberger not to be nervous, and Woody Durenberger reported a few times that Indrid Cold got kind of pissed off and was like, "What's wrong with you? I've taken this form to be pleasing to you. If you cut me, I'll bleed just like you. But he said he would see him again and got back into his craft. And one interesting fact that I've come across is that Woody Derenberger says as he re-entered the craft, there was a second being on the ship waiting for him to return. But Woody Derenberger went to bed and woke up the next day and went right to the police. And I love Woody Derenberger because he's like the perfect witness. He's just a, 52-year-old traveling salesman. He's the deacon of his church. He's never been in trouble. And the police actually noted that when he came to the police station the next morning to report this, that they had no trouble believing him. Even if it was something far-fetched, they took it serious and had to go check it out. But he just relayed the same message that Indrid Cold told him, is that, we're here. Your country knows about us, your government knows about us, and stuff like that. But after that initial night, a few weeks went by, and Woody Derenberger was visited by Indrid Cold hundreds of times. Even Woody's wife has been recorded saying that he had been there many times. Indrid Cold had reported actually brought a second pilot from another planet to his house. And there's even I think it was 6 months where Woody Derenberger just disappeared, left his job, left his wife, his kids. And when he came back, he said, I was with Indrid Cold in his spacecraft. Which I think you don't hear about that type of report too much at all.
Yeah.
But Woody Derenberger, he didn't gain anything from it. His wife ended up leaving him. He actually had to leave the area, just to get work. So this wasn't somebody, he really, I'm not going to say he's not somebody who would have gained from making the story up, but it certainly didn't serve him well at all. But he said that Indrid Cold told him that they were from a different planet to where people don't talk. They talk through telepathy, which eliminates the idea of bullshitting each other, so everybody's quite truthful with each other, and they just explore other planets to see what's going on and maybe run into somebody who can understand this. But it's just the same old, aliens have been here forever type of stuff. But one thing I love about Indrid Cold is that he was able to list planets like Lanalus and all these other things where they lived, and like that co-pilot he brought one time mentioned a different planet he was from, and the fact that his wife would, she'd openly say that, it was interesting to meet somebody like this, but after a while you can really understand that they're not human. And shortly after that, she was able to recognize tons of people on the street that had the same traits, and she was basically convinced that we weren't alone and they're all over the place.
It's like they live.
Yeah.
Well, there have been a few posts here and there about the return of Indrid Cold. Has he ever come back or made another appearance since then?
Not that I can say with any faith in it. There's so many websites that will just literally put out anything. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like when Woody Derenberger reported it, there's maybe like 10 or 15 other people who reported seeing a giant craft on the side of the road, and if not that, there was 20 people who reported seeing a guy in the same type of clothes, matching the same description as Indrid Cold, trying to wave them down on the freeway. So there's a lot of things that support what these people were saying. After Indrid Cold, the Men in Black came and just pretty much invaded West Point, Virginia. There's reports from tons of people saying that there were guys in there with old cars and old clothes, and even a report of some court secretary who was visited by somebody that matched the description of these MIBs that were floating around, and asking her a few questions about Mothman, and then getting sidetracked by her fountain pen that was on the desk, and grabbing that and staring at it and floating, quote, floating out of the room. So there's
she was laughing, though. That's the best part, that he was laughing like he got one up on her. God, I took your pen.
I got your pen. There's plenty of reports like that of other people, just like seeing the MIBs in town. People would say, like, they reported seeing some mysterious figure in outdated clothes at a diner, and then that person sitting down at the diner and staring at the fork for 3 hours. So it's everything about it's weird.
Well, I'm sure this question is on our listeners' minds or other people's minds. I mean, has anyone ever come forward with any sort of evidence to the fact that the Mothman is real, photographic or hair samples or something? Have you heard any stories of that nature?
None whatsoever.
No, none whatsoever.
There's not even so much as like a footprint or the only evidence that I guess you could really say there was when Mothman was chasing the car, the the Scarberry's car down the highway, and its wings hit the car. Everyone that knew them said that they treated their car like their baby, and if anything were to happen with the car, they'd be really pissed off. And the wings apparently scratched the roof of the car, and they know that he wouldn't have done that just for a joke, and that if he knew who did it, it would have been a big deal. And the fact that these scratches came after the Mothman allegedly scratched the top of his car kind of gave some, I guess, a little more meat to his story. But that's really the only evidence that I've heard of from the Mothman.
Well, the first sightings of Mothman, you mentioned this. It took place in the area that was the storage area for the TNT during the Second World War. Now, one of the things that I couldn't get out of my head when I'm doing the research, is it really not possible that whatever this thing was, that he was just a mutation, that it was like possibly some kind of
Spider-Man?
Big mutant. Yeah. I mean, isn't that a possibility?
I mean, I guess it would be a possibility. It's not one that I really buy, and the only reason is because of the whole nature of the thing. It's the way that it's able to fly, and the way that everyone reports seeing it taking off. Like it doesn't flap its wings. People have reported seeing it both like gliding and spinning like a helicopter up into the sky. And what does that? Like I know that there's like flying squirrels that glide, but birds, they have to flap their wings at some point. They can't just take off the ground without flapping their wings. They gotta get going somehow. And the mutation theory is possible because of all the chemical leaks at the TNT plant as the igloos they built started to deteriorate. And there were, like Mateo said earlier, reports of mutated fish and things like that. So, I mean, the fact that there could be some sort of weird mutated animal, but I don't think that is the answer to the Mothman story.
Yeah, if you look into the type of animals that lived in that area, even like residentially or even in a TNT plant, I mean, 4.5 feet is a huge difference from 9 feet.
You're right.
So, I mean, it's just undeniable, especially when you hear and see accounts of people living there saying, I know what a goddamn sandhill crane is. That's how many reports of paranormal activity do we get to see that? People right next to an airport going, no, that was a helicopter, or no, that was this. But these people are like, yeah, okay, no, that's not what that was at all. To the point of insult,
Right.
And that's one thing I don't know, I take more credibility from like people's demeanor and their actions and what they say naturally. And when somebody's claiming to see Mothman and somebody says, was it this bird? And they go, hell no. I kind of take that serious.
And especially with the the way that they describe it with the inset eye, the eyes inset in its chest, and that you're not going to mistake eyes being inset into a chest for a sandhill crane. Like sandhill cranes, they are large birds, but they're slender birds. They're not. It's not something you're going to think has a man-sized chest with eyes in it.
Yeah.
And that I guess is where the barn owl theory comes from, because when they have their wings flared up, their eyes are big, and so it looks like their wings are going up over their head and their eyes are in their chest. Like, I don't know. It's a stupid.
But again, that's the biggest barn owl on record. I mean, that's at least let's say 5 feet tall.
No, they're not maybe a 5-foot wingspan. They're
exactly. Well, if it's got his arms over his head like he's partying or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's say that he's 5 feet tall. It's not what people are saying they're seeing. It's not at all what people are saying they're seeing. I love you, Joe Nichols. I really do.
When Lucy and I were on your show, the Whatcast, I think, Mike, you had mentioned, and I don't know if it pertained to the Mothman phenomenon or not, but there was, I think it was some story that you sort of created, and then a website sort of took it as an eyewitness account. I think that's how the story went.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Is there any is there any good real resources out there with substance that our listeners can actually look up and read or watch that's going to help them learn more about the Mothman and be able to make up their sort of own opinions about or just do research on their own if they sort of got interested in tonight's conversation?
There's a pretty good book out there called The Eyes of the Mothman. I don't remember who wrote it, though. But that's really good. It's got the account of what happened and interviews with various eyewitnesses and things like that. I had this one book, like I said earlier, I read all the articles that happened at the time, and there was a book that actually collected it. Every article that was written on it from the area, they had, it was kind of like in a scrapbook format, and then they had a new interview with Linda Scarberry. And I can't remember what it was called, though. So I guess that's not very helpful. Sorry, guys.
What's the documentary, the film?
No, the scrapbook with all the news articles in it.
Oh, okay.
If you remember it, email it to us and we'll put it on our Facebook page because that sounds really interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I will.
I'm sorry, Mateo. Go ahead.
Oh no, there's a Netflix show or Netflix documentary that's on there. It's called Eyes of the Mothman as well, and that's a really, really good one. It's just packed with information. I mean, like there's an account of a area back in the 1700s. And this poor band of Indians were just harassed by the locals. And, the Indians didn't attack anybody. They didn't do anything. And it got to the point to where some dickhead just was like, yeah, destroy them. They're bothering us. And the way they decided to eradicate that problem was to invite Chief Cornstalk to a meeting. And as soon as he got there, they just destroyed him. They just shot him to pieces. And it's claimed that he said as he lay dying that, I curse this land forever, and he was in West Virginia. So I mean, there's even people who attribute Mothman to that, but who knows?
That's interesting. That's an interesting aspect to it.
Yeah, but I've seen a lot of people mention that theory and talk about the theory, and a lot of historians and Native Americans from that area. But then I've seen. Both, I forget what tribe they were with, but even their warriors and our soldiers talking about, well, if we kicked open a door and shot him with 20 people, he wasn't whispering shit after that. So there was no curse. I trust me. I kind of agree with that. So who knows?
Well, you know what, guys? I'm so happy that we were able to have you both on tonight, and it's truly amazing to hear you guys talk about this topic. And I want to be able to give you both the floor to speak about whatever you want to leave our listeners with regarding the Mothman. If there was anything that we didn't cover or discuss, I'll leave it up to you both to bring it up now or to make a statement about. So, Mike, what would you like to leave our listeners with before we conclude the topic tonight?
That the Mothman is bullshit and it's really just a barn owl.
You hear that?
No! My closing argument is that Mothman is a straight-up Scooby-Doo villain, and you all should be scared at all times. You guys read about the Ring of Fire and the earthquakes that are happening? That's Mothman. Get ready. This crap in Russia, that's Mothman.
And he would have gotten away with it, too, if it wasn't for you pesky kids.
Or time-traveling Barack Obama. You bastard. I think that Mothman's literally a pet of evil time-traveling Barack Obama. And he just left somewhere.
He hangs out with Indrid Cold.
He does. Why not? The capabilities of that guy.
Yeah.
We're screwed, guys.
Well, no, seriously, is there anything that that you wanted to get out to people about the Mothman, or is there some sort of final thought about the Mothman phenomenon that you want to sort of encourage people to know about or learn about?
Well, I mean, touching on Indrid Cold, Indrid Cold said he was a interdimensional, interspace time traveler, and he said that he had creatures from other planets on his craft. I mean, where are we left to go with a lot of these things? Like, we haven't done a Bigfoot episode yet, and I'm kind of scared to. Buddy who has a great blog, and he talks about Bigfoot a lot. And, I mean, where else can we go with Bigfoot other than he's an interdimensional creature? Because every DNA test, every hair sample, every video, I mean, if you want to hold on to the dream, people are going to have to expand their minds more.
I agree with that.
I think the answer is way weirder than what we think. I think there might not be a giant, what is it, Mike? The Atlantic great ape?
So,
Yeah, I don't think that exists in our woods anymore. I almost would accept the fact that there's a giant hominid that we haven't discovered yet living in, like Canada's jungle, before I'll call it some other type of great ape. But I think we're hitting a point to where we have to be way more open-minded. I mean, we're looking at planets that are light years away in some cases, and some of them are beautiful and perfect for us. But I don't know. People need to dedicate more study to this type of stuff, because Mothman might not be real, but just like with ghosts and UFOs, I mean, something's happening. People are seeing something. I don't know if you guys watched that. What is it, Mike? The Serious Disclosure documentary?
Oh, yeah.
I talk about people being good witnesses, and on our show I've talked about people who have like just a little bit more pizzazz than they should. A little people excited to talk about what they're talking about, but there's so many straight-laced guys who have that demeanor of the police officer I was talking about, that just will say crap that'll blow your mind. Just guys who worked for NASA, not being a researcher, not being a public relations guy, but literally building the fins on the ships that send our crap to space, saying like, there's aliens all over, and we've known about it forever. And you can only hear that so many times before I think we all need to turn an ear to go, like, we need to be less skeptical. Like, okay, just tell your story. There's too many Joe Nichols.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between a skeptic and a professional debunker, and he's more of a professional debunker. Like, I think skepticism is a good thing. You gotta be skeptical, but you also have to. You have to have an open mind about it. You have to have an open mind about everything, because if you're getting especially in cases like the Mothman or the Phoenix Lights or anything where you've got a multitude of witnesses, you can't just discount that as being swamp gas or weather balloons. They're seeing something. There's something that's actually there, and you can't just sure what you're saying is true some of the time, I'm sure, but it's not the case always. And there's always these large groups of people that are seeing things, or many witnesses seeing things over a period of time. And not everybody is going to be on point. Not everyone is going to be telling the truth, but you're always going to have a fraction of those people, a percentage that are telling the truth, and those are the ones we need to pay attention to. What's going on with those ones? What are they reporting that we don't know about?
Yeah, I totally agree. There, I mean, as technology advances and stuff like that, we need to keep up with those guys. We need to keep up with all that stuff. As skeptics and stuff, you know, we read about chemtrails and infrared sightings and stuff like that. I think we need to be prepared to be able to face that evidence and to debunk it or prove it. It's time to get weird.
Exactly.
I think Joe Nichols is married to Debbie Downer, right?
Yeah, he's such a
Oh, well, you know what, guys? It has been so great to have you both on. Thank you, Mateo and Mike, for coming on the show. So can you let everyone know about the Whatcast and what an amazing show you have, and where can they go and listen, and what do you discuss on your show?
See, now you're painting, you're putting us in a good light. Now you're heightening expectations. The people are going to listen. What is this shit that Lucy was telling us to listen to?
I was like, what? I want to hear this. What are you talking about?
Well, we're the Whatcast, as she mentioned, and you can find us on Twitter. We're on Libsyn.com. What's the other stuff we're on? Like we're on a bunch of stuff.
Right. We're active on Twitter and Facebook. I'm just trying to get the hang of it. It's such a weird thing. And we're on Tumblr. We usually use our Tumblr for everything. So if you go to the whatcast.tumblr.com, that's where you're going to find everything you'll need. Our shows go there instantly. You can go to the whatcast.libsyn.com. We're on iTunes.
The Tumblr page is actually where we post our show notes as well.
Yeah, if we're talking about something and we mention a photo or a video, there'll be links there to it, so you can see it too.
Oh, great. You know, everybody who's listening right now, check out Mike and Mateo on the Whatcast if you want to learn more about Mothman and all weird stories, and even the Obama MIBs, because they get into that a lot. Go to the Whatcast, check them out. Thank you guys, Mateo and Mike. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's really been, finally, hopefully, you know, we had a little trouble in the beginning, but it was a great show, great insight, great knowledge you two both have. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and educate our listeners. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you for having us.
Guys.
Yeah, we're more than flattered, and we definitely appreciate it. You guys are heroes of mine, so no problem, anytime. Thank you for listening to us.
All right, the check is in the mail, Mateo.
Awesome.
All right, guys, have a great weekend and enjoy.
Thanks,
Miss Lucy,
too.
happy birthday.
Thank you.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, she thinks she's 21
Thank
again.
you, guys. I am.
Take care, you guys.
Right,
Everybody
guys.
in the chat room. Everybody in the chat room. Thank you guys for sticking around and listening to us blabber.
All righty. Take care, Mike. Take care, Mateo. Have a great weekend.
Nice.
You
Good
too, guys.
night.
Thank you.
You know, we got to get into the Obama MIBs. They keep talking about that.
And Joe Nichols.
And Joe Nichols, which I think he's married to Debbie Downer. Must be.
Okay, so after all that, do you believe in Mothman?
Well, you know, I do. I mean, it's not that I didn't before. You know, I think I'm sort of in the same boat as Mike. I never really learned about Mothman up until maybe 5-10 years ago. I mean, I've heard of the name and of the movie and the actual phenomenon itself. I know that it existed because of experiences and witnesses and accounts, but I had really never delved into it as much as I have done with UFO and Bigfoot and spirits and ghosts. But I don't know. I believe the witnesses. I think I take it like how you take the paranormal. It's sort of like it has to be overwhelmingly compelling in order for me to believe it. But for the most part, I have to experience it or witness it myself in order for me to 100% be behind it.
Mhm. Well, see, you know what? I've never really known anything about Mothman. I've heard about him and everything. This show caused me to do a whole lot of research. And the bottom line, out of all the research that I've done, I'm still kind of leaning towards the mutation theory.
Really?
Yeah, because, all these igloos that are in this area, some of them are still closed up. They don't even know what's in there. And they're so close to the ponds and the water in the area. I mean, I watched that film that they were talking about, The Eyes of the Mothman, and some of the scientific experts that they had pointed towards the fact that they don't even know what effects that these chemicals in the ground have on animals or on humans for that matter. I mean, part of me is thinking, because I do understand what Mateo was saying, that the UFO part of it seems to be completely separate, the injured cold and all the sightings. And once the UFO sightings started, I mean, there's actually more UFO sightings and there's more things to do with the UFO than actually Mothman. He just kind of showed up and he was there and we've had all the witnesses, but it kind of like evolved into more of a UFO thing. I think the injured coal part of it is really, really interesting. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to do another show, but this time on the UFO side of it.
I just watched recently a video clip online, but it was a news clip, not a news clip, but it was some sort of reporting that was done on ABC News. It may have been like on a 2020 or Primetime, whatever one of those ABC shows are. And it had talked about the whole idea of UFOs and are they here? Or are we alone? And they explored that phenomenon itself. And somebody was on there, and I can't remember who and the name, but it was somebody within, astronomy or of the sciences itself. And he had talked about how if UFOs are true, if they are real, that they could be, they could have this sort of same mindset that us humans have, that if we were to visit another planet, just like what we're doing right now with Mars, and we've sent a rover over there, that this particular guy had talked about on this report, that who's to say that life on other planets wouldn't send some sort of being or droid here to do its bidding, to do its research, to do its experimenting or whatever it is. And so when everybody was talking about injured coal and this whole story of UFOs and Mothman, it kind of sort of plugged that thought in my head about, could this be the UFO bringing the Mothman here as a representative, for lack of a better word, from their planet to check us out? And yes, it may be aggressive, and yes, it may be horrifying, but it's obviously from another planet, so it was formed differently than us. Could it be of that nature? And that's what it is. I think of those things, but then I also think of the question that I had brought up to both Mike and Mateo about the and I don't know if I'm saying this right, it's the thought conversion of, here we have history telling us, going back to as far as the Mayan culture and how they revered animals and nature so much, and even with the Egyptian culture, and how you can see hieroglyphics where you've got the eagle head or the bird head on a human body. You know, is it the sort of, I guess, downswing of that knowledge being formed into modern day quote-unquote reality, where people are sort of thinking that and seeing something and then putting those two together, or thinking that history and thought, I can't even think of the right word, thought manipulation or thought creating this creature to be real, to be reality. I don't know. I'm tossed between those two right now, and it's not just with Mothman. I do this with a lot of the other phenomena as well. It's just sometimes, you know, that pendulum swings a little bit further in certain areas. But I don't know. With this Mothman idea and this phenomenon and the theory of it, I'm sort of balanced. I'm 50-50. You know, I'm not swung either way yet on this.
Well, one thing that was really interesting that film brought up was they made a comparison of the Mothman to the Jersey Devil. And I saw someone in chat had mentioned the Jersey Devil before, about the physical characteristics of Mothman and the Jersey Devil. They both have these wings that, you know, show up. The main difference is that Jersey Devil has an actual head, and Mothman has these red eyes in its chest. So I don't know. I'm still leaning towards the mutation kind of thing.
So you believe that there is a Spider-Man?
No, I don't believe in Spider-Man.
I don't know. I think, you know, it could be. I'm not you know, downplaying or you know, negating your theory. I think I don't know. I think if it's mutation, then it would be. I think there would be sort of like that 75-25 split, where it's 75% human and 25% of some other being or deformed being.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's human, wouldn't it have been seen more? Would it have been in the public eye more? Because you still have that human mentality and not of a dimensional being, because you're a mutation. And you know, you could be right too, because maybe the reason why we're not really seeing any more sightings now is because maybe this mutated Mothman has died, has passed over. And so, you know, there could be some credence to it. I don't know. But it's something to debate and research more about.
Well, like I said, the UFO side of it is really, really interesting, because just the description of Indrid Cold's saucer-like, his saucer actually being in the middle of the road, where Woody Derringer he had to stop his car. And then again, once Mothman was seen, then all of a sudden they saw lights, they saw people reported actually seeing craft overhead. So, I mean, there's definitely something there, whether it's related to Mothman, and like Mateo said, maybe Mothman escaped from their craft and they were just simply looking for him. I mean, we never saw him again.
That story of Indrid Cold reminds me of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because there's that scene where he's driving, you know, Richard Dreyfuss is driving down the road, that highway, and, you know, you see the headlights in his rear window, and you think it's another car, and then it sort of moves off to the side, and it's a UFO, you know, and it just zooms past him or hovers above him. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I fully don't know all of the story. Like, I don't know the whole story of Indrid Cold and Woody, so I can't talk about it, and I can't negate anything debunk, as people say. I can't do that because I don't know all of the story. I don't know all of the history. I don't know all of the accounts, so I can't do that. So, again, this, for me, I'd have to delve into it a little bit more and talk about it. But it was interesting because, we've been doing this show for, it'll be almost 3 years this fall, and this is the only show that we've done on Mothman, which is pretty weird. I don't know why that happened, but it's pretty weird.
Well, I think we need to do a show on Injured Cold and on the UFOs. I think we do, because I think there's enough witness accounts. I think there's enough documentation on that part of it that would make it pretty interesting, and that's right up your alley. I'm surprised that you haven't really gotten into that side of it.
I don't know either. I really don't. But if we do another show, I'd really love to. Obviously, I'd love to get Mike and Mateo on again because they were phenomenal tonight. But I'd also like to try and see if we can actually get a witness. A witness that is still alive from Point Pleasant, and or I think there was like an infamous news reporter during that story that has done documentaries. I think I've seen and so on and so forth. But I'd really love to get the heart into the meat of it and actually hear it from the horse's mouth and find out what the story was and what it was like during that time, just to get more of a feel of it, because I think I can probably connect more if I'm able to get somebody that can tell it, from their first-person experience.
I think that would be wonderful.
All right, so I guess that's it for Mothman tonight. This is cause for another show on the topic. I think we just sort of lightly scratched the surface. We really haven't delved deep into it as much. Obviously, we can't do that much in 2 hours. But it is an interesting topic. It is something that we should really talk about a little bit more. I wish I'd love to get, more feedback from listeners and folks out there and what their theories are about, because a lot of interesting opinions and quite fascinating theories come from you guys out there. You the laymen, you guys are the normal people, and hearing the stories and theories from you really make things click. So we really should do another show on this topic itself and see where we go with it, see what comes out of it. So thank you, Mateo and Mike, for a great show. And again, their show is called The Whatcast, and it's on Libsyn. And I think it's Libson or Lybson. I'm not too sure, but you can find them on Twitter, I think, and you can find them on Tumblr.com, and go to The Whatcast, because they truly have an amazing show that they both have produced.
They're fascinating. I just love listening to them. They really are.
All right, so Lucy, who is the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week?
Okay, well, the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week this week is Deanna Pace of Westchester, New York. Now, Deanna wrote us a really, really nice note with support for us and the show. And we really do appreciate her kind words, and we're very honored to make her our fan of the week. Some of the things that Deanna likes are The Real Housewives of New Jersey, Breaking Bad, Jimmy Fallon, and I'm going to screw this up, Indira Menzel. I just did a John Travolta.
Yes, she did a John Travolta.
She likes Outback Steakhouse, Five Guys Burgers, and, of course, she likes Paranormal Review Radio. Thank you so much, Deanna, for your kind words. Thank you for being a fan, and congratulations.
Yeah, it was really nice. I think I had woke up one morning and logged on to Facebook and to our page and saw the message there from Deanna Pace, and it was a long, lengthy letter telling us how she really did appreciate us as hosts and what we do on the show, and it was in regards to the show that we did with Lloyd Auerbach and to the sort of rant and rave that I did after that in regards to a previous guest that we had. And so I really do want to thank you, Deanna Pace, for letting us know, and that's what we love. We love to get feedback from you guys, whether it's good or bad. Honestly, whether it's good or bad, because and it's not so much bad, comments or bad emails. It's a critique that we take, and every time that we hear something that, either we could do better or that we should have done this or do that, I take into account completely. I don't just, I'm not those bashers that don't tell me what I need to do and, go on your merry way. No, I really do. I take into account what you guys want to hear, because we're doing this show for you. So if you're not hearing something, or if we're doing something that is not correct, please let us know. But also, too, we love compliments. So if you like what we're doing, let us know that as well. You can always email us at paranormalreviewradio at yahoo.com, or you can always go to our Facebook page and send us a message there. But don't forget, if you do want to be a Paranormal Review Radio fan of the week, just like us on Facebook at Paranormal Review Radio.
Well, the Mothman continues to be a mystery that no one seems to have an answer to. There are many witnesses who swear they saw this creature, but with all the evidence and first-hand accounts of UFOs, lights, and other weird things, no one can say for sure if this creature really did exist or not. With all we talked about tonight, you have to ask yourself, do you believe in Mothman? Well, do you? Thank you again, Mateo and Mike, for being on the show. It was a lot of fun. So, we talked about it briefly, but next week, Thursday, April 17th, is going to be a very special night. Yes, we will be broadcasting live from a location that has a history full of sadness, horror, and injustice for the many poor souls who were sent there. Pennhurst Asylum started out with good intentions, but along the way, things changed. The many people who were sent there ended up in neglect, abuse, and a lack of care. Anthony and I will be investigating Pennhurst Asylum, and we'll be attempting to contact the poor souls that remain in this infamous location. What are we going to find? Well, it's our first time at this location, and we're so ready. You are all invited to listen and watch from the comfort of your own home. Take part in a live EVP session and watch what happens as we stream part of the investigation live. Now, our past live investigations have been so active with your help, and we expect this one to be just as active. So please, do not miss this special Thursday night show. Thank you, everyone, for being the best fans of any paranormal show around. We really do love you all. Thank you, Anthony, for being my partner in the paranormal. I cannot wait to get to Pennhurst. So, until next Thursday, Parapeeps, keep believing and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio.